Riyad Will here from the DR Group, and we're with Sadiq from Approved Financial Services to do the January market update. Gentlemen.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So I'll jump into the GTA numbers as a whole, and then will jump into the Durham numbers. So total residential transactions year over year, we're down 44.6%. We had about 5,500 transactions in January, down to about 3,100 transactions in this year, January. Month over month, though, we're only down 1%. So we had about 4,700 transactions in December and about 4,600 in January. Average selling price, we're down 16.4% year over year. January 2022, about 1.242 million. And in January 2023, $1,038,000. Month over month, we are down slightly, about 3%. December 2022, we had $1,099,000, and in January of this year, $1,066,000. Now, total new listings, we're down 3.7% year over year. January this time, we had about 7,900 new listings, and then we have about 7,600 in January of 2023. Will?
All right, so Durham numbers. New listings were up substantially from December 2022. Average price down to about $887K. Average price from January of last year to January 2023 is down roughly 25%. The average price of Durham regions, of course, the price is down due to the rate, but also I think people are just waiting to see what's going to happen. I think the spring will be busy again. For comparison, though, January 2021, the average price was $876. So again, who knows what's going to happen in the spring? I believe, as I've been saying now for the last few videos, that the market come spring, we'll see more activity, pricing up slightly. And because I think you're starting to see it now, a lot more listings coming online, seeing a couple of bidding wars happening in the region. So it's slowly starting to come back to being a more of a reasonable market with some activity.
Yep. Sadiq, what are you seeing in the mortgage world? I know we had that rate hike in January, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Bank of Canada said that their intention is to slow down the pace of these increases. Now, what that slowdown really means, that's a very broad statement, so it leaves them a lot of flexibility. But last week we also had, or I think actually this is probably the start of this week, which is yesterday, numbers come out with the employment. So we have basically the employment numbers are about 10 times higher than forecasted, which means there's more, when there's more employment, it means more people are earning money, which means more money, more to spend, and that translates to higher inflation. So when we see that happening now, it's very possible that the Bank of Canada could say, oh, hold on, we might continue with some of these rate increases because more spending means more inflation, right? And if it was just a small bump in the employment numbers, okay, they may still pause there, but when it's 10 times what was forecasted, that's a significant. Now it could mean that the forecast was really terrible and whoever did that just really missed the boat on it, right? But the numbers itself is strong, so it suggests that we may be in for some more rate increases. So it's really important that people, look at, okay, am I going to hedge myself on the bet of they're not going to be in rate increase anytime soon? Or is it going to happen just maybe not every month or so, but maybe every other month, or not every rate review session, maybe every other rate review session, right? What they've also said is maybe, because when they say that the pace of it is going to slow down, so maybe we'll skip one, but then the next rate increase might be, 50 basis points or 75 basis points to make up for the fact that we didn't, change anything last time. So it's still very ambiguous. They've left themselves a lot of room there. And that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with the, mortgage rates if they do respond to those higher employment numbers.
And when's the next planned interest announcement?
March.
Okay.
March. Yeah.
Perfect. Anything else you want to shed light on, or you recommend, or what you're seeing?
Yeah. Well, actually, Will mentioned something that you wanted me to talk about.
Yeah, the
There was
whole
a recent.
pre-construction and the whole pre-construction. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was some buzz going on, especially with one builder that lowered their price basically kind of overnight, right? So somebody bought a property shortly after them buying, the builder lowered their price on the same property, and now that person, is going to be stuck, right? Because you have this, this disparity between the price they paid for and what's that appraisal value going to come in at. This is not the first time this has happened, and not the first time it's happened with significantly known builders. Okay, back in '06, when the financial crisis hit, very well-known, prominent builders flipped around because they needed to clear their inventory. They had these houses that were already under construction, or that they had scheduled and allocated resources towards building material, scheduling contractors, and so forth, that they needed to liquidate so that they can get their cash flow back. And they were worried that the market might go even further, so they dropped their prices, very much to the aggravation and dismay of people who just recently purchased, right? So it's bought a property for 850 and tomorrow it's worth 800. Nobody's going to be happy about that, right? It's not uncommon for builders to do that. What sometimes they do to make it a little bit more palatable to people is they would take the floor plan and adjust the floor plan a little bit, right? They'd shift something around and give it a new name. So instead of calling it the Sapphire, now it's the Emerald, or it'd be the Sapphire 2, right? Or they might shrink the square footage of small. So instead of being 2364 square feet, it might be 2358. And it's a whole different model now, so that they can lower the price point and justify it. So, hey, well, we didn't have the Sapphire 2 when you came in to buy last week, so it's not the same property, right? Yes, it could fit on the same lot or whatever, but yeah, no, it's, and that's how they would justify it. That's one of the biggest things for people looking at those pre-constructions to be cognizant of, right? Like, in a moment, the market can change, and you signed last year, and now that same model that you purchased for might be selling for 50, 100, $150,000 less. And when you come up to closing, if things have not changed, you might be at the disadvantage where you cannot close and could potentially be sued by the builder for the differential in price. Right?
So outside of being a mind reader, how do you avoid that?
Well, you really can't unless you decide not to go with pre-construction, right? Like, I mean, that's a risk of pre-construction. A lot of times people are buying into pre-construction on a speculation that, if I buy in phase 1 and they're supposed to have 3 phases, by the time phase 3 hits, it'll gone up a significant amount of price, and I already have a property that's made me money. I don't even own it yet, right? That's the typical buyer belief when they're buying in pre-construction. They're locking in. But realistically, if you look at the price per square foot of the home you're going to buy through a builder and compare it to the price per square foot on a comparable resale home, right? Let's say within 1 to 5 years old, which is still fairly new, and you look at the differential in the price per square foot, you'll see that the builder's already priced in those increases on you, right? That's already been priced in there. That's been happening for years because I've worked on builder sites doing financing. So I know the price per square foot. I remember looking at one where the price per square foot was like $175 per square foot, where a comparable, like highly comparable property within 3 years old was like, it was working out to like $87 a square foot. Big difference, right? So it's clear that the resale was a better bang for your buck. It's just that people look at it and they're like, well, I want to customize my cabinetry, and I want to have this, and I want to have this. I don't want to do all the upgrades, but for that price difference, just put that money into doing the work on the house that you bought and making it the house that you want.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So you're basically saying it is unavoidable. So then let's just say someone now bought pre-construction in 2021. Now the property is now coming up. Oh, hi, Riyad. Coming up to close in the next 3 to 4 months. What can they do to minimize the pain? Because the reality is that homes now are priced lower.
Yeah.
So what can someone do?
Well, first of all,
They have 120 days.
it's I mean, you can't really do anything about valuation. Valuation is valuation. You can't control that. It's how the market flows. On an appraisal, the appraiser is going to look at comparables and determine if that value is supported. Now they will look at comparables within the same surrounding area, so it doesn't matter if 20 kilometers east or west or north or south of you, something's different. They're going to look in the immediate vicinity. Hopefully it still supports. On the financing aspect, it all depends on your down payment, right? So if somebody's buying a property and that property's dropped 10%, but they're putting 40% down payment, then they have the room within their down payment. All that's going to change is the loan to value, how much they're borrowing relative to the new adjusted value of the property is going to go up, but they're still going to be able to get the same mortgage amount, right? Because what's happening is that difference in the value, when the value drops, let's just say from 850 to 800, then they're just taking basically 50,000 that they would have been putting into the down payment for the financing purposes and using that to pay down the difference in the values. All right. End of the day, the numbers are the same for the client. They're taking the same amount of mortgage. It's just that on paper, their loan to value is going to go up. So that doesn't impact them if they're putting significant down payment. If they're a person who's putting 5 or 10% down, then it's a bigger impact because that difference they still have to come up with then. So if let's just say you bought for 850 and now the value comes in at 800 and you're putting 10% down, you need to put your 10% down on your 800, that's 80,000 instead of the 85. And now you need to come up with that difference of that 50,000. Well, you had 85 and now you're putting 80. So you got 5 there, but that other 45, you got to come up with somewhere. Right. And chances are, if you're only putting, 10% down, you don't have that 45 sitting around anywhere. Right. So that's where sometimes you got to go and bank up mom and dad, or knock on your friends your house and say, hey, I need you to bail me out on this one.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Some good info there.